Welcome to Jerry Recaps. The story continues. After passing out on the ground, quite a bit of time passed before YuWon managed to wake up. He wondered how many hours had gone by. His body was still a mess. Seeing how he had just managed to gain consciousness with none of his burns having healed yet, YuWon assumed not too many hours had passed. YuWon's whole body ached from the burns. And that wasn't the last of it. The icy aura is still the same. The burns weren't his biggest problem. It was the icy aura that remained inside him after handling the Arctic steel sword and 4 ice crystals. YuWon's lips were cracked dry, yet his insides felt frozen over. Simply put, his body was a wreck. I almost died. That was the first thought YuWon had after waking up. He really had approached the brink of death. It could have gone really bad if I had been even a little slower. And with that, YuWon had obtained Cinder Eyes, the thing he really needed to obtain in the tutorial. It was the halfway point to obtaining the golden Cinder Eyes. After getting up, YuWon saw that he was surrounded by skull remains and Surutra's corpse. YuWon's guess was that he must have tumbled off of Surutra's head after losing consciousness. I actually defeated him. However, the tutorial had yet to end. How is this not the end? YuWon couldn't help but laugh to himself. It kinda looks ugly now that the fire is extinguished. But it's not a normal corpse. YuWon walked towards Surutra's corpse. YuWon climbed up Surutra's corpse. With the fires extinguished, Surutra's body looked quite unimpressive. It looked like the corpse of a normal giant. However, this was no normal corpse. Every single byproduct of a demon's corpse is an item. Demons were beings of high prestige that one could normally only see on the upper floors of the tower. And even then, Surutra was quite special for having been born as Surtra's child, even if it was only a low-class demon. YuWon rummaged through Surutra's corpse. He tore out a rib before digging into its chest until he found an empty space. Well, almost empty. YuWon's eyes flashed as he looked inside the empty space. There it is. He found a bright red orb. It was located around Surutra's heart, but it was more like a gem than a heart. This orb was both Surutra's heart and the source of its powers. Giant's Heart. It can be used as an elixir. The heart of the demon giant Surutra. Born in the Fire Nation, Surutra exuded the strength of a giant and a fiery aura with his heart. It holds a great amount of mana and the power of a giant. YuWon pulled out Surutra's heart and firmly held it in his hand, feeling the intense heat. I want to take it right now. YuWon inspected the status of his body. But that might be difficult. Giant's Heart was a pretty dangerous elixir. Not only did it hold a great amount of mana, it was an elixir that changed the musculoskeletal structure of the person that consumed it. It required a great amount of stamina to intake so much power. Right now, YuWon's body was a wreck after the fight with Surutra. On top of that, the icy aura from the Arctic steel sword and ice crystals was still inside him, so there was a great chance that the icy aura would dilute the fiery aura. As YuWon was pondering over the giant's heart, he heard a voice. Are you finished? YuWon turned around to see the source of the voice behind him. He replied after putting the giant's heart in his inventory, You are here again. That is my line to say. The admin replied in an irritated tone. I'm about halfway done. I already heard an earful from the other guys because of you, and now you. The administrator shook his head and let out a deep sigh. He must have had a pretty big headache. The administrator massaged his forehead. He knew what was coming. The balance of this tutorial is completely messed up. Yet even while voicing his frustrations, the administrator couldn't do a thing to YuWon. Administrators were beings that had to precisely follow the rules of the tower. As long as YuWon continued to act within the rules of the tower, his insane rampage would continue. Well, you are first going to go to the final area. The 4th tutorial is currently in progress, and it's almost over. It's almost over? YuWon realized that he must have actually been passed out for a while. The fourth tutorial's theme was a defense that lasted a whole day. He had assumed that he wouldn't be able to join the fourth tutorial midway, but things were progressing much faster than he had anticipated. How much time is left? There are 4 hours remaining. You can just relax and wait until then. 4 hours, you say? The fifth tutorial was the final trial required to enter the tower. Because of that, it had the highest difficulty, as well as the longest duration. YuWon nodded his head. Okay, that'll be enough. I would hope so. Has the reward been decided yet? It seems like it took you quite a bit of time. YuWon inquired the admin. It took a long time to decide what to give you because I had to consult the other guys this time. The other guys that the administrator was referring to were probably the administrators of other floors. That meant that this was a decision so hard, a single administrator couldn't decide by himself. This was honestly not a surprise. Even though it was weakened by the intervention of the tower, a newbie that has yet to even complete the tutorial defeated Surutra. In the first place, Surutra was meant to bring annihilation to the tutorial area. It was not intended to be defeated at all. You have obtained 10,000 points. You have obtained the skill Heaven Slaying Star. All your stats increased by 3. YuWon was pleasantly surprised. He hadn't anticipated that he'd be given a skill. Heaven Slaying Star? However, a skill by the name of Heaven Slaying Star didn't exist within YuWon's memories. A skill I've never heard of. YuWon thought that he knew most of the high-rank skills. Well, I guess it doesn't matter. Heaven Slaying Star, you possess the fate and talent to slay the heavens. From here on, your fate and worth will change depending on what the life you kill is worth. Your stats increase depending on the number of opponents killed, as well as who your opponents were. All stats increase by 3. I bet it's something pretty good. YuWon quickly checked his new skill. YuWon found the rank satisfactory, but the effect was a bit underwhelming. Still, an increase for all stats was definitely a plus. This is definitely better than any mediocre skill. It wasn't necessarily a good thing for a skill to be high rank. Completion rate. YuWon looked closely at the completion rate that was in place of proficiency. Does this mean it's not a complete skill yet? Though rare, there were growth-type items in this world that grew stronger with the user over time. Whatever the case is, there's probably no better skill to compensate for my lack of stats. YuWon paid no mind to the 10,000 points he was rewarded. Do you require anything else? YuWon nodded at the administrator's question. Please give me 1 lesser scarlet medicine ball. You're not even batting an eye while buying such an expensive item. The administrator grumbled while handing a bright red medicine ball to YuWon. You have spent 10,000 points. You have obtained a lesser scarlet medicine ball. YuWon took it from him. The great scarlet medicine ball was a far more effective item, but that wasn't something he could purchase right now, as it cost hundreds of thousands of points to buy it from the shop. He had no choice but to be satisfied with his current purchase. Anything else? That's it for me. Then wait here for a bit. Take that and get some good rest. And with those words, the administrator vanished. YuWon put the medicine ball in his mouth and started chewing. It tasted like it was made with every single bitter plant in the world. You have absorbed the lesser scarlet medicinal ball. Magic power and stamina increased by 1. YuWon swallowed the lesser scarlet medicine ball and sat down on the ground. He could feel a refreshing energy circulate within his body. He closed his eyes and let his heart absorb the energy of the medicine ball. Your injuries and stamina start to recover quickly. There were 4 hours remaining. Within that time, he had to heal from his burns and injuries while preparing for the 5th tutorial. I lost too much time from fainting. I also need to consume Surutra's heart. Time passed quickly. Was it because he took the medicine ball? YuWon's wreck of a body started healing rapidly. Time continued to flow. YuWon had closed his eyes waiting for the 4th tutorial to end. He opened his eyes, instinctively feeling the will of the tower calling for him. It's starting. YuWon got up from his spot. And at that moment, the air around him started to vibrate. His body floated up, and his vision started to blur. Like paint being mixed together, the sky and the ground blended into black. YuWon floated high up in the air as if he was being separated from the world, and his sights changed. Disconnecting from this world and connecting to a different world. The world that had condensed together and turned black suddenly separated, and another world made of completely different colors appeared. The last tutorial will begin. The air that had turned hot from the battle with Surutra turned cool. The sky was clear, and there was the scent of salty ocean. And in front of YuWon, a great forest could be seen spanning the horizon. YuWon raised his head to look in front. A lot of people started appearing around YuWon. Where is this? Is this the 5th tutorial? There are a lot of people here. How big is this place? There were approximately a little over 100 people. Some people were on alert, thinking that there were too many people. That was because up until now, some of the missions required people to attack each other. This is the first place where tutorial participants from various worlds will gather for the first time. This was the starting point where people from an infinite number of worlds gathered for the massive world that was the tower. And the tutorial called this place the collective world. The final tutorial will now begin. People murmured after being told that this was the final tutorial. Final? As in the last one? So it's finally going to be over? No way. It's called the tutorial. Can you please shut up? In the midst of the crowd, there were some people who didn't like the commotion. The messages continued. Baraganda Island is slowly sinking into the sea. Baraganda Island was a huge island located in the midst of the ocean. There is only one condition needed to prove your worth in order to escape the island. Defeat the boss at the peak of the island. You will be given a score depending on your contribution towards defeating the boss. The final reward will be decided based on the score and how long it took for the boss to fall. The time limit is 30 days. Once the time limit passes, the island will sink completely. Time limit, 720 hours. What? A month? Maybe because of the unexpectedly long time limit, a lot of people voiced their shock. Up until now, the tutorial was at most 4 days long, with some tutorials being as short as 1 hour. Therefore it couldn't be helped that they were surprised by the sudden large increase in the time limit. However, this news didn't bring chaos or anything. In fact, most people looked relieved by it, since it meant that they didn't have to raise their weapons and fight the people around them. Also, having more time was better for achieving a specific goal. However, some of them must have noticed. YuWon saw that a few people in the crowd were tensing up rather than relaxing. Why we were given such a long time limit? A month's time. It was so much time that the duration was long enough for people to get complacent. However, they weren't given a month for nothing. It meant that they had a month to get as strong as possible in order to achieve their objective, which was a single boss. Most of them couldn't even fathom how strong the boss had to be. Maybe it was because these were people that had managed to make it to the last tutorial, but one by one, the participants started to get moving. And inevitably. Have you all heard that? I think it was meant for us to meet up like this. Why don't we form a team together? Things started off with people forming groups. Should we? That sounds good to me. Why don't we take this opportunity to learn each other's names? I refuse. An authoritative voice rang through the area, capturing everyone's attention. YuWon also shifted his sights to the source of the voice. Who said you could just become my comrade? A comrade should be someone I can trust my sides and back with. That's why I'll pick my own comrades. Hargan mocked the people whose attention he garnered. By the looks of it, I don't think you guys are worthy of being my comrades. The man continued to mock them. What did you just say? One of them angrily called out. Right. He was here as well. YuWon noticed a familiar person from the tower. You arrogant prick. When a guy standing next to a white-robed man took a step towards him. Around the man, An electric field made from an immense amount of mana continued to convulse around him. With a yellow electric blast, every single person around White Rob Man was sent flying into the air. The people stopped in their tracks, stunned at witnessing the scene. It was a blonde-haired, golden-eyed man wrapped in a white cloth. His white outfit looked out of place in the chaos of the tutorial. The man's name was Hyun, the self-proclaimed successor of Olympus, a descendant of Zeus. Hyun looked at his surroundings with an arrogant look on his face. You guys are nothing but cannon fodder. What was that? Was that a skill? It was a very powerful electric attack, annihilating everyone within a 5-meter radius. Despite having just made enemies out of almost 100 participants, Hyun looked unconcerned. To already be this strong at the start of the 5th tutorial. YuWon nodded his head. No wonder he got the tower's attention. Even on the lower floors of the tower, it was rare to see someone with this much arcane power, but Hyun was no normal tutorial participant. He was a being of a different class compared to your average tutorial participants. So that's the power of a pureblood. Purebloods referred to beings that were selected to climb the tower after being born and raised inside the tower. Purebloods had already experienced the tower's magnificence from the moment they were born, so it was only natural that they possessed far greater power compared to people who had only just been selected to participate in the tutorial. And thus the fairness of this game ends here. He was also the one who made the biggest contribution in defeating the boss during my previous life. YuWon quickly finished reminiscing about the past and decided to stop paying attention to Hyun. YuWon had no intention of getting too involved with him. What Hyun remarked. In the midst of exuding electricity to threaten those around him, he spotted YuWon. While everyone else was standing still, paying close attention to him, YuWon was walking away somewhere. Hey you! Shouted Hyun, looking at YuWon. YuWon stopped in his tracks and turned his head. In an instant, Hyun had walked over to YuWon and now stood right in front of him. Are you talking to me? YuWon said. What are you? Hyun asked with a curious look. Isn't that a pyromancy robe? Having resided in the tower for a long time, Hyun seemed to know about the pyromancy robe. Although, that wasn't very surprising. Olympus was a group full of rankers, so Hyun had probably seen the robe during his time in Olympus. YuWon answered you're right while thinking about how things might have been about to get annoying. How did you get this? This item shouldn't be something you can obtain in the tutorial. I bought it. With points. YuWon said in an irritated tone. He was annoyed by Hyun. You bought it. YuWon's short answer, as if it was an easy and obvious thing, put a confused look on Hyun's face. On the other hand, Hyun was also equipped with items far better than what the average participant could ever have. Hyun showed a sudden interest in YuWon, realizing that the man who was wearing the pyromancy robe was different from the other participants. What's your level? Asked Hyun. Don't you know that it's impolite to ask someone their level? YuWon replied calmly. You're not wrong. But is that already a common practice in the tutorial? Hyun asked while scratching his head. He then nodded his head, saying, Okay. I understand. I won't ask about your level again. Instead, would you like to form a team with me? The pyromancy robe must have seriously piqued Hyun's interest. His face looked like he was waiting for YuWon to say yes. Hyun must have thought that YuWon would definitely accept his offer, since YuWon should have seen his display of might. However, not particularly. See ya. YuWon didn't find much merit in Hyun's offer. Hyun blinked in silence, as if he had become mute. Never could he have imagined having his offer turned down after showing off his skills. YuWon walked straight past Hyun after giving him his answer. Is this because he doesn't know who I am? Hyun thought while turning his head to look at YuWon. But YuWon was already far off in the distance. What the? With his pride damaged from being ignored, Hyun frowned as he tensed up his calves. Hyun imbued the power of thunder into his legs before running after YuWon in a fury. Stop right there. Hyun chased after YuWon for a while. He wondered how long he'd been running. Every once in a while, a monster would attack him. But Hargan was able to blow them up in an instant before continuing to chase after YuWon. There were piles of monster corpses left, wherever he passed. But Hargan eventually gave up on chasing YuWon, deciding to rest and catch his breath. The distance between the two had widened to a point where Hargan could no longer see YuWon. How is he so fast? Hargan was absolutely bamboozled. How was he unable to catch up, even though he had run with everything he had? Hargan didn't think YuWon was using some sort of special skill that raised his movement speed. Because if that was the case, there was no way he would have failed to detect the flow of mana. That could only mean one thing. How high are his stats? It meant that YuWon had been running solely using the power of his stats. Hargan was speechless. Is that guy also a pureblood? But to be faster than him, who was an Olympus pureblood? Let's see. Who were some fast groups? Maybe he's from Alfredo. Or maybe he's an expert from the martial realm? Or could he maybe be a descendant of Hermes? Hargan thought of many different possibilities in his mind regarding YuWon. But in fact, YuWon was actually an Earthling, who regressed. After thinking for a minute, Hargan decided to just let it go, since he'd get nowhere by just thinking about it alone. But there was one thing Hargan was sure of. And here I was, thinking that this was going to be boring. Hargan grinned widely and let a bit of electric current flow out of him. His golden eyes stared out in the direction that YuWon disappeared. This is going to be interesting. On the other side, YuWon, who had been running away with all his might to stay away from Hargan because he is a part of Olympus. Did I lose him? Thought YuWon. Seeing that Hargan was no longer following him, YuWon finally stopped running. It had taken 5 minutes for YuWon to lose him. It was no wonder that Hargan went around claiming to be Zeus's successor. He really is fast. The electric attack he showed off was quite a threat, but his running speed was really something. His physical abilities were astounding for someone who had only just finished the 4th tutorial. And from what YuWon remembered, his specialty wasn't speed, but extreme brute force which utilized his electric powers. YuWon finally breathed a sign of relief. The balance of this tutorial is completely messed up. YuWon had a flashback of something the administrator had said. Hargan was strong even for a pureblood, possessing enough power to completely ruin the ecosystem of the tutorial. YuWon realized that maybe the administrator wasn't just talking about him. Not that that's any of my problems. YuWon paid no mind to these issues and focused on his own goals. He found a cave inside the forest. And inside the cave, there were dozens of gnolls inhabiting it. YuWon started killing all the gnolls inside the cave. You have defeated a gnoll. Heaven Slaying Star's completion rate increased by 0.001%. Gnolls were monsters with the heads of wolves. You have defeated a gnoll. Heaven Slaying Star's completion rate. YuWon slayed all of them and took the cave for himself. After killing a few gnolls, the completion rate for Heaven Slaying Star increased by a little bit. It was a really little bit. After killing dozens of gnolls, the completion rate wasn't even 0.01%. I'll have to kill the creatures in higher locations if I want to properly raise the completion rate. However, YuWon's objective in finding this cave wasn't to hunt monsters. YuWon sprinkled the scentless powder he had purchased earlier at the entrance, and deep inside the cave. He did this to prevent other monsters from detecting his scent and coming inside. I think that should do it. He had consumed the lesser scarlet medicine ball, and recovered his body more than sufficiently. On top of that, the icy aura from the Arctic Steel's sword and ice crystals was all gone now. YuWon had finished preparing as much as he could. YuWon inserted his hand inside his inventory and pulled out a bright red crystal. Giant's heart. YuWon took a deep breath and opened his mouth wide. Finally, YuWon chewed and ate the crimson gem. Suddenly, YuWon's heart started beating fast. Some energy started entering his heart. His veins started expanding rapidly from within due to energy inside the red crystal. You have consumed the lifeblood of giants and demons. Giants' blood has started penetrating your body. Demons' blood has started penetrating your body. A fight between human, giant, and demon blood has started within your body. It was hot. So hot that YuWon thought he was going to go mad. The pyromancy robe that YuWon was wearing had no effect. Cinder eyes is resisting flames of the giants. If it weren't for the fire resistance from Cinder eyes, it might have felt like his internal organs were melting. While squirming on the ground, YuWon exhaled a breath of hot air. He rolled around the floor, back and forth, flailing all around. His body was burning hot. His bones and muscles felt like they were churning, and his blood felt like it was flowing backward. It went on for who knows how many hours. Cinder eyes failed to resist flames of the giants. As YuWon had expected, Cinder eyes alone wasn't enough. This damned blood was excruciatingly hot. Had YuWon not been in good condition, he might have already lost his mind and fainted. Unfortunately, there was no way to make this pain go away. The only option was to endure it with mental fortitude. Giant blood is something you normally cover yourself in, not something you eat. It was a warning he had received from Hercules, the slayer of giants. Eating that during the tutorial is basically suicide, so no matter what, you need to first obtain Cinder Eyes. If you somehow failed to get the Cinder Eyes, give up on the heart. Fortunately, YuWon had managed to obtain Cinder Eyes. However, the pain was still agonizing. It just wasn't to a degree that would kill him. You will only get one chance. That's right. YuWon only had this one chance. That's why he had to endure it. Take in as much power as you can. If he wanted to ease the pain, he could always expel the power that was entering his body with mana. It was a pretty difficult and tedious thing to do, but that much control over mana would have been a piece of cake for YuWon. However, he chose not to do that. YuWon's stats started increasing crazily one after another. His stats continued to rise. Though it was mostly strength and constitution that increased, arcane power also increased by a little bit. Giant's blood and demon's blood both thoroughly seeped into YuWon's body. His body started reforming as his musculoskeletal structure shifted. Even more time passed. YuWon's stats increased slowly and steadily. YuWon wondered how much he might have gained in stats. Normally, level-up messages were very much welcomed, but YuWon wasn't all that pleased. It should be coming along any moment now. What YuWon wanted wasn't a few measly stats. What he was after was a skill that was worth dozens of stats. That was the hidden piece YuWon was after. Cinder Eyes and Flames of the Giants are clashing. You are able to control Flames of the Giants through Cinder Eyes. You have fulfilled the conditions for the hidden piece. You have obtained Colossal Fire. This was an unexpected situation. YuWon didn't know if he should be happy or not. What, even is Colossal Fire? Despite the pain, YuWon was so baffled he couldn't help but let out an empty laugh. The skill he wanted didn't appear, and instead, he became able to control fire through Cinder Eyes. It was definitely a plus, but this would have all been for naught if he wasn't able to obtain the skill he was after. YuWon fell to the ground unable to handle his body. Finally, the day was over. It has already been 12 hours. YuWon was lying flat on the ground, waiting for a hidden piece to appear. Half a day had already passed by. YuWon had gained quite a bit in stats, but these weren't the results he had in mind. Were we wrong? It wasn't really a surprise. In order to obtain this skill normally, you needed to kill and get drenched in the blood of 10,000 giants. YuWon did obtain the giant's heart within the tutorial, but it was still a pretty unlikely theory to try. I guess I should be happy with this. YuWon couldn't endure it anymore. Slowly, his vision went dark, and his mind fell into a deep sleep. YuWon wondered how long he was unconscious. When he opened his eyes, he felt that truly anything could happen in the tutorial. Finally, the system window is notified, you have fulfilled the conditions for the hidden piece. As the system window was notified, YuWon gained his senses back, gaining consciousness. You have fully absorbed the lifeblood of giants and demons. YuWon's eyes widened. The message he was waiting for finally appeared. You perfectly consumed the giant's heart within the tutorial. I did it. YuWon finally unclenched his teeth. First after the fight with Surutra and a second time just now. YuWon had fainted a total of 2 times already. You obtained gigantification. Almost 24 hours had passed. What's the time? Looking at the time, YuWon guessed that he had blacked out for about half a day. Almost a day had already passed since the 5th tutorial started. Quite a bit of time has passed. A time limit of 30 days. Most people viewed it as plenty of time, but that didn't apply to YuWon. I need to finish this as fast as I can. As far as YuWon knew, the fastest clear record for the final tutorial was 1 week. It was a record established by Odin. Odin was part of the first generation that recorded the start of the tower. He led the giant faction of Asgard, and he was the greatest magic fighter that YuWon knew. I won't lose to him. Everyone was a competitor in the 5th tutorial. Every single action you do gets converted into contribution points. From hunting to the hidden piece, as well as special quests. You are scored on all these different factors and ranked accordingly. His true competitors were the rankers of this tall tower that absolutely dominated the rankings in their respective tutorials. The ranking window appeared in front of YuWon. Hargan was the first with other names on the top 5 list. There was already a big divide within the rankings. The biggest share of contribution points would be awarded from defeating the boss, but within the 5th tutorial, you could also gain CP from normal hunting. First place was, of course, Hargan. He had created a dominating lead over second place. While looking over the rankings, YuWon noticed some familiar names. Elater and Paladin are both Pantemium-affiliated rankers. They probably participated in the tutorial from worlds that are at least 2 tiers higher. And Yolch. Is he a pureblood? I've never heard of him. YuWon actually didn't know every participant in the tutorial. During his first time around, he was part of a 10-man group, and Hargan ended up defeating the boss while he was still hunting. As for Lee Sungyun, despite being born in the same world as YuWon, he had managed to rank between 2 pure-blood participants from worlds full of magic and swordsmanship. I never heard of him either. No matter how much he racked his brain, YuWon couldn't remember anyone named Lee Sungyun. Maybe he died here. YuWon scratched his head while checking the rankings. He realized nothing would come from thinking too hard. Unless he was going to actually team up with some of them, it didn't matter to him what rank people were. I wasted too much time. YuWon checked his condition one last time. Level 57. He had achieved it after leveling up 5 times from killing the skulls and Surutra. And with his total stats being almost 300, he was actually very powerful for his level. My strength and constitution are too high. YuWon didn't like his stats being too lopsided. The combat style he aimed for was an all-rounder. Because unless you were aiming to push ahead with just pure strength like Hercules, it was better to have a nice balance among all your stats. As for Colossal Fire, YuWon took a close look at the mysterious new skill he obtained. Colossal Fire belonged to a species named Firekin. That is born with fire within them. The small fire within them will not extinguish even after death, remaining for a long time, and gets passed on to future generations. The power of the skill will increase with proficiency and arcane power. It wasn't all that bad. In fact, it was pretty good. Colossal Fire was a skill that made up for YuWon's lack of an AoE attack. This should be usable. YuWon stepped out of the cave for the first time in 24 hours. The sun was right above him. YuWon was blinded from being in the dark for so long. Now let's see. YuWon activated Cinder Eyes and started looking around the forest. His range of vision expanded, and he was able to see things he previously couldn't. Cinder Eyes was able to make what couldn't be seen visible according to YuWon's will. he spotted a village nearby. YuWon warmed up his feet and started getting a move on. YuWon followed the first track he spotted as soon as he came out. And that led him to a horde of monsters with gruesome cries. With the head of a pig and green skin, they were monsters called orcs. The orcs spotted YuWon. It's a human, we have a prey. Orcs were one of the rare monsters on the lower floors that actually possessed intelligence. That's why they were able to form tribes, and it made them tricky to hunt for the amount of EXP they gave. An orc tribe. Won't be a bad place to test out my skill. It was a huge hunting ground with hundreds of orcs. This was adequate to be YuWon's first hunting ground. YuWon used his skill and the fire spread to all sides. It was the skill of colossal fire that he obtained before. The armed and drooling orcs that had approached YuWon had fallen into chaos. Fire! It's hot! The human did it! Blazing flames circled around the tribe in an instant, making it so that the orcs couldn't run away. A few of them had already fallen, roasted to a nice pink color. YuWon jumped into the air and took out a sword from inside his inventory. It was the well-sharpened sword he purchased in third tutorial. YuWon jumped into the fire he had created, starting the hunt on the orc tribe. He slayed the orcs one after the other, he didn't have time to relax. Until now, YuWon only gained 67 contribution points. 6 days left. The plan was simple. I will finish this tutorial faster than Odin. YuWon's cinder eyes blazed as he firmed his will. YuWon would finally raise his rankings significantly. And a day passed just like that. YuWon, who had started late, was able to raise his ranking in an instant, joining the forefront of the tutorial. And after 4 days had passed in the tutorial, he reached 5,266 points, securing the second position. Hargan and the other participants were able to witness a record they couldn't believe. It's him. The guy that suddenly climbed up the rankings. Hargan took a close look at the name YuWon, which was now ranked second. So he's coming up. That person had jumped up high on the leaderboard in no time. Though Hargan didn't actually know his name, he was pretty sure. It was him. I thought he was just some guy that was really fast at running because none of these guys were catching my eye. Hargan grinned softly. The day the final tutorial started, he was surprised and baffled by the fact that there was a participant that he couldn't match in speed. However, this also excited Hargan. That's all for today. If you like the next part of this manhwa, just comment below. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to like, subscribe and comment for getting epic content on this channel. See you next time.